Thank you for your presentation. And I'm from China, from Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences. And for the security and nutrition, I think yes, maybe for the nutrition part is much more criteria and it's much more and difficulties. And because when we did the similar survey, and when it's easier to measuring food security according to FAO's standard or FAO's dimensions. But when we calculate the nutrition, it's really difficult. And we use the FAO's and standard and also use the Chinese standard. We calculate and some vulnerable group of people in China, there's and situations of the malnutrition. However, and for us, till now we can't calculate vitamin. So it's we have data and we have the consumption data, so we can convert to some major and like the proteins and the fats, but it's difficult to measuring some other and like vitamin and some and mineral and this kind of and elements. So I think yes, there's when we talk about the resilience and in the food security and the nutrition, I think two parts we have to stress on. One is PPP. I think I have joined the several conference and this morning and afternoon, and I think the first part is okay, and the private sector and also involved in this and the program or framework. But I think another thing we should focusing on the South-South cooperation. As I see, I think till now I didn't see some people talk about South-South cooperation. I think in the developing countries, some they have their own good example and models we can use to other countries. So also I think there is a big gap, and it's maybe it's just some people mentioned the knowledge gap. The knowledge gap not only in research, but also in the government. I think in most of the developing country, the production of food security responsible by Ministry of Agriculture, but the nutrition is responsible in China by the Ministry of Health. So it's totally different kind of ministry. So there is a big gap for the policy, for the knowledge, for the concept. And also I think the gap also exists in the consumer. So there is, when we did the survey, we found a very interesting story. And for farmers, we did the survey in a remote area. 42% of the consumers, they have protein shortage. However, for the farmers, they sell the milk to buy the Coca-Cola, and they sell the eggs to buy the candy. Yeah. So they are really has the big gap of the knowledge gap for what kind of the nutrition they need. I think this is a kind of gap, and it's need this kind of program to do something. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Nutrition knowledge is a key asset for as resilience as well. Should we go for a final response or comment or complementary info from the panel? Joan?
Well,
we have, just to let you know, we have 10 minutes before we go out.
I can talk for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
No, I think there are so many things have been said, and not all of them require an answer. I think many comments are very relevant. But just to come back to this basic idea of, okay, what is the aspect of nutrition and how that is linked to resilience and what is new in this whole thing. First of all, I kind of don't share 100% your pessimism. I think nutrition is probably the sector that has made enormous progress in the humanitarian and development setting over the last 20 years. I remember Lola, our systems in Morovia in '91 were based on CSB and improvisation more than actual, maybe not for you, but for me, were very basically kind of non-technical, not thought out and everything. Now I think we have an enormous progress. Nutrition has become a sector that has been studied, researched and everything, and is used, and very correctly and very good, is used as an entry point in this whole resilience program. What is the resilience program? The pessimists will say old wine in new bottles. To some extent, yes. There is not, basically, I mean, before we called it early recovery or we called it different other ways. But still, I think resilience is for me, I mean, maybe the most important thing is the enormous integrating power it has as a concept by bringing together the humanitarian with the development world, the curative and the preventative world. I mean, you cannot do resilience on one of the two sides. It's not only curative or preventative, but the different communities of practice have been brought together with this resilience. Now, how to scale this up? I think we are seeing, let's say, foci in different areas, in different countries of resilience building. A lot is called resilience building, which is not resilience building because it is not a full integration of the different sectors, of the different ideas, of the different, I think it is a part of resilience building. And I think it's, I mean, how to scale it up is first of all making sure that we all accept that it is a multi-sectoral, integrated approach on both sides, development and humanitarian. On the side of nutrition, I think there is a lot of work being done now on joint programming for nutrition. For example, here in Ethiopia for the EU, we have a joint programming effort for the member states plus Norway, trying to go into a joint program on how to tackle nutrition, wasting as well as stunting, together with the government. So I think how to scale that up is this joint programming, further causal analysis of what really is the problem in Ethiopia. Now I speak for Ethiopia in terms of malnutrition, but maybe also in terms of the model that I presented could be replicated by other donors. Now we're working with the EU on this. Maybe the Irish, the Spanish, the Americans, whatever, would be interested, and that discussion is ongoing, to replicate the same model in other clusters of the country and see how we can kind of push that agenda a little bit more. If I would be Minister of Agriculture tomorrow in Ethiopia, which I have no ambition to be, I would impose that on the donors. I would say, you want to do resilience building, you will take a zone, that means 8 or 7 or 5 Waradas districts, and you commit yourself over the coming 10 years to get into resilience building, and this is the model, this is what we mean by resilience building. Then I think we would probably get somewhere. Now we still have a patchwork of different things, different models, different understandings of the system. I think we could go a bit further in scaling up in the direction I described. I think that is an idea. Sorry.
Thanks a lot. Jill or Sherry, if you want to respond to anything? Sure. I think Jill, yep. And then
just very briefly, and only to reflect back on what everyone has said, is that I think, and I can only speak for the International Federation, the Red Cross, that we're struggling with all the same things. We're looking at what does it mean to partner. We're looking at, if we're talking about resilience, and how do we then, what does that mean for our health department? How do they talk to our disaster management department? just internally, we have structural challenges that I think will make it, that we will need to address within our own organizations to be able to meaningfully look at resilience, to be able to meaningfully look at what integration means. And if that is a struggle internally, then what does it mean for how we engage as partners in a multi-sectoral, multi-agency approach? And so, yeah, I think that when we are looking at scaling up, we have to look beyond our organizational borders and beyond the normal project or silo borders that we generally operate in. And a common language, I think, is what resilience provides those of us that straddle the humanitarian and development worlds and have recognized that maybe the impact that we are attempting to achieve isn't taking us where we want to go. And so this is a new opportunity. Yeah, I agree. Maybe not. I'm cynical. I like cynicism. I think it's really good in terms of thinking critically about what we're doing and are we just placing another label on this, or does it actually force us to think differently, structure ourselves differently, flow funding differently, and work with communities differently?
Thank you very much. Sherry and maybe Domiti. Sherry, Domiti, very briefly, and then Harold will conclude.
Thanks, Charlotte. I think one of the things that I just wanted to raise in terms of how we understand what a food crisis is, or what a crisis is, or how it's defined. So, at the very beginning, Charlotte talked about the FAO SOFI report on protracted crises, and one of the categories for those top 20 countries was that 8 out of 10 of those countries received food assistance. All 20 of those countries received food assistance 8 years out of the past 10. So when we talk about humanitarian emergencies, at least in the food assistance sector, the food security sector, we're often talking about acute spikes in chronic food insecurity. So it requires us to think, and I mean, this will come as no surprise to most people in the room, but it requires us to think about what we're doing in those contexts quite differently, because we are using humanitarian instruments that are addressing a chronic development problem. So the integration between short-term and long-term approaches to food security or humanitarian assistance and development assistance, it's difficult, but I'm not quite sure why we're unable to do it, given that we're working primarily, at least in food assistance, in a chronic development context. So no answers.
No, maybe my last word is, if I agree with Joanne that, I mean, there has been a lot of progress in nutrition, and I mean, it's good that nutrition is also considered as a sector. I think maybe it's time not to look anymore at nutrition as a sector, but try to see how nutrition can just contribute to do this joint planning, and how the tools that have been developed in order to do joint planning for nutrition can be also adapted and used for doing this joint planning for resilience. So it's not anymore talking about nutrition as a sector, but how nutrition can really provide tools and models for joint planning.
Harold.
Yeah, I think I've spent much of the last decade trying to make the point that humanitarian and development is a false dichotomy, that nutrition is an investment at the same rate, higher rates of return than roads and infrastructure and so forth. Most nutritionists I talk to will agree with me. I don't think I've made much headway on ministers of finance, which was my real goal. So the one takeaway that I'm going to try to bring out of this workshop is Johan's comment that perhaps the concept of resilience does give us an opportunity to make the point that working to reduce malnutrition is a long-term investment for the economic good of the country.
Great. So, and it's only the first day. So thank you very much to the whole panel.